Are you ready to embrace a new beginning? In part two of today's episode, Tamara Hill is back and she shares even more about grief and resilience and surrender and letting go and gives us as parents wisdom on how to reconnect with your passions without losing focus on the things that matter most. So stay tuned. How did you make it safe for them? Or how did they share later on? No, that's really helped me open up. That really helped me feel like I could come to you no matter what. Any suggestions on that?
Mhm. My son was at a recent reading for the book, and he said, I thought I knew my mom really well. And I read the book and I felt really proud that I do know her very well. Like he knew a lot of the stories. There were some insights for him, certainly, and there were some perspectives that he looked at things differently. And people came up and said, good job. That's really impressive that your son had this confidence of, I know my mom. And I think my upbringing was rather complicated, being raised by grandparents who they didn't get to meet, for example. So even being, I think it just starts being honest with my own story and my own truth with where I come from and who I am and the decisions I've made. And you probably know as a parent, kids may understand that. And then at certain phases in their life, they ask the same question over again because they're looking at who they are and where they come from. And they have a different point of view of everything at different stages. And I think just being really honest, like even when I got laid off, being very honest, I was laid off. This happens to people. And they both told me recently, because a friend had said, how does your daughter feel? You wrote a book, you've done this. Is that pressure or joy? Or does that inspire? And so I said, I'm going to go ask my kids that question. And they both said, Mom, you represent to us like going after your dreams and freedom. And I thought, wow, I didn't expect that answer. And I'm still taking it in because that could mean so much to so many different people. But I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah. Really appreciate that last part that you said. You go after your dreams and you represent that freedom too. And I think how hard that is for listeners, for parents that I work with, for individuals even, how it's so hard to achieve that balance. I can speak with personal experience here. If I didn't have children, I have 4, often 5 with an exchange student. I would have probably multiple degrees more, and I would be in the thick of doing all the business stuff. I would be traveling in the world, and when I think of those, like, sometimes I feel a little bit
Yeah.
sad. Oh, I feel like I'm waiting, but also leaning in and doing what I can, and so listeners feel that way too often, the feedback that I get, that they are pausing their life and they start to get resentful
Yeah.
or depressed. How do you do
Yes.
that, making them a focus and a priority, but not losing sight of yourself either and losing who you are?
It's such a good question. And I'll tell you, it's a huge challenge. And for me, the ideal scenario is you raise your children with the person you had them with. And in my case, stay married to have a family unit. And that didn't work for me. And we were very committed to living in the same area and co parenting. I would say when the kids were with their dad, that did give me an opportunity to focus just more on myself and buckle down, right? And maybe get some rest and re-energize to stick to the commitments. I would say one part of the pandemic that was beneficial was all of a sudden working from home and my kids are with me and they were older, which was unfortunate in a lot of ways in terms of one child missing a high school graduation and the things that come from that. But I got to refocus on what do I want to do. When the kids were with their dad and I would fly to Italy to look at property because it was my dream to start a hospitality business there. All of a sudden I'm now staying at home in the pandemic and I can reshift and say, okay, I can't buy that property in Italy, but what am I going to do in my next phase? I can go buy a property down in Palm Springs. The kids and I can retreat. I can start my luxury vacation rental property in the midst of this pandemic. I can really dive deeper into my book. And that created an opportunity for me to do that. And so I think I was able to go full throttle during that period of time. But prior to that, a friend had shared to me recently that one thing she appreciated about me is when a door opens, I always walk through it. And I said, oh my God, I didn't know you were watching. That's the biggest compliment coming from you. It felt so good to hear that from her. And then I said, thank you. But what you don't see is often I just fall right off the ledge, or I stumble through the door, or I'm picking myself up. And she goes, "Oh, no, I get it. That's why I'm actually saying it. I know every time you walk through the door, it's not a win. I understand that there's a lot of failures and losses and pain." But she appreciated my persistence. So I think I'd align persistence with resilience in terms of when it comes to accomplishing, like you said, you'd maybe have all these degrees and do all these other things, but when you're persistent, it will come. It just might come a little later down the road than you expected. And I guess I'm a little stubborn in that way.
At the same time, I hear elements of that through the things that you're talking about is like you're trusting in these shifts. You go through these doorways that open up for you, and maybe it doesn't look all buttoned up and beautiful like you would see maybe in a movie, but there's beauty in that still. And I just think sometimes it's about perspective, like a personal story here. I think about one of my degrees I was getting while my kids were also doing homeschooling. I'm not even a homeschooling mom. Props to people that do it, but it's not my favorite. And it was really hard to focus. And all of that came at a cost. It was important to focus on myself at that point too, as I was getting a degree. And I don't regret it. But now with that perspective, looking to this, I'm like, do I want to repeat that? Do I want to get another advanced degree while another child or children need me in a specific way that might be more time sensitive? And it's just remembering the costs, remembering that this is such a short life, like going back to your grandma and to your best friend and other people. It's okay, maybe it's a shift of perspective. Like it's not a loss as much as maybe there's another door, like you just talked about. And
Exactly.
seeing it that way, you had so much courage, so much persistence, so much resilience in your different stories. And I think listeners can have that too. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think as you were speaking, some things that popped into my mind is not for talking about we have one life and not forgetting that. But what popped to my mind is when it comes back to raising children, right? Going back and checking in as we go on our journey and we're accomplishing things, like in your case with the degrees, maybe checking in at one point. Is that what you still really want? Or are we so determined that we have that in our head? I've been building my business and I have to say, okay, wait, why are you doing it? Are you still doing it because you find the joy in it? Are you trying to prove yourself to someone or something or the world? Is it still that core value and priority? And when the answer is yes, you keep going. If the answer is uncertainty, maybe you take a pause. And even with children, if there was an experience a couple of years ago, my kids arrived in Italy, we're having this great time, and then there was a moment of tension. And I don't know why, I just thought it was a great time to check in and say to my kids, "Hey, you can always talk to me about anything. If there's anything that happened growing up you wanna share." That I just was the spidey sense,
Yeah.
and my son had shared something from when he was 13 or 14 that I just said, "Oh, buddy, I actually thought that was a great thing. Here's my perspective." And he started crying and got emotional, and I said, "I'm so sorry," and he goes, "No, mom, that was the easiest conversation ever. I wish I brought it up, like, 6 months ago." And I said, "Oh god, I really hope you guys can talk to me about anything." And he literally said, "I just love you so much. That was so easy." And I said, "Yes, you gotta understand as a parent, you do something you think the kid's gonna love, and it may be why you go to therapy when you're 30. Like, we need this feedback." So I would just say it's like constantly checking in
Mm.
because for me, with that feeling, knowing that life is so precious, something could happen tomorrow, I'm not here. I really take a lot of pride that all those nothing's left unspoken, all those decks are in a row. So that's how I look at it.
It's like checking your ego. Like, for example, last night I was talking to my daughter that's gone off to college. We had several hour conversation, all of us talking to her. And at the end, I was feeling very proud of myself. Look at how close we are. We're awesome. And patting myself
Yeah,
on the back. But there was a part at the very end where she was triggered by something, and you could tell it was something that needed a repair that maybe was blind to, and so
that
I tried to explore it, but wasn't quite the time, and then just what you said that resonated with me, that constant check-in, maybe going back. I feel like so much of parenting, no matter what stage you're at, she's a college student, is repairing and reconnecting so that they do feel
that's
safe.
right.
Just like you said, that safety, that honesty, and not being so proud that we don't validate their feelings or give them empathy or make amends when the opportunity arises.
It's so true. I'll go back to that word surrender. And as a parent, sometimes that is exactly what we have to do. We have to surrender in the moment, knowing it's not the right time,
Yes.
trusting that we can go back to it, trusting they're capable of us too. It's the unknown a little bit, right? And how we navigate those waters when we understand how hard it can be sometimes.
And we don't have to overcomplicate it. Sometimes I think I over talk or try to defend myself. That is not required. Something simple like with your
Yeah,
son. It's just simple, just talking, validating,
that's right.
apologizing, whatever it might be. We talked earlier about your memoir and potentially ending with doing a poem, if there's something you'd like to share. But before we go
Sure.
to that, I was wondering
Yeah.
if you have any final thoughts, that something you'd like to share with listeners, whether it's about your book or even resilience or grief that maybe you haven't shared yet, and also where we can find you.
Sure. I would say, and there is a poem on this topic called The Asking, not being afraid to ask for help. That's something that I am still working on, but have made a big shift. And it's pretty powerful because if you are going after your dreams and accomplishing what you want in this one beautiful life, there's going to be moments that you need to be vulnerable and you need to share when you're having struggles and you need to ask for help. And I think that's so important for anyone to do. And you can find me. I've got a couple Instagrams, Tamara 1116, the Hill House Threads on Instagram, and a website that shows the properties that are available for rental. I do workshops on how to build the life in which I lead, whether it be a writing workshop or how to redesign a property to be a successful renter or just reconfigure your life living abroad. And that is thehillhousegroup.com.
Love that. And we'll put those links in the show notes. Appreciate you coming on. And if you could share one of
Thank
your favorite poems, I'd love to hear it.
Sure. I'd say this is relevant to our conversation and hopefully bring some comfort on just a really nice, simple way, I think, to live. And it's called The Thread of Maybe. We plan like architects of certainty, drafting futures on fragile glass. But life is weather, wild, unscripted, shattering even the best laid path. Anxiety camps in the unknown, pitching fear where clarity fades. But when we loosen our grip on control, the storm quiets, we find space. The thread of maybe is not weak. It flexes, bends, and refuses to snap. It teaches us to dance without doubt, to meet the dark with an open map. There's power in the not yet formed, in mornings that don't promise sun. For when we stop needing guarantees, we start becoming one breath, one risk, one radiant undone.
That is so beautiful and a very perfect place to end it. All about surrender and going through those doors and letting go. Honestly, like trusting the process. It sounds like just the beauty that lies ahead if you're willing to let go.
That's right.
Mm,
Thank you so much. It was really wonderful to be here. And I encourage everyone to become, right? The threads of
mhm.
becoming, try to become your best self.
Thank you again, Tamara, for being here. We loved having you on the show as a guest today.
Thank you so much.
Thanks again for joining the conversation as we discuss how to thrive as a parent and focus on what really matters while enjoying this one life that we have. If you're ready for more hands on guidance, you can find those at fulfillmenttherapy.org or in the show notes. And don't forget that we have upcoming group coaching as well as individual coaching that is now available. If you're looking to improve as a parent in your marriage or as an individual, so that you and your family can lead more fulfilling lives. All right, my friends, I will see you back here next Monday with another new episode. Until then.